Originally from the Saginaw area of Michigan, Charles H. Rhodd was of French and Indian descent. Throughout the course of his lifetime, Charles left his mark across the American frontier, but his name first appeared on a roster of land buyers in Saginaw County, Michigan in 1835. Charles acted as interpreter during the negotiations and signings of several treaties with the Chippewa. Charles was closely allied with the Ojibwe chief Naquashikaming, or Middle of the Lake, and traveled with him as an interpreter to Washington, D.C. to negotiate the sale of lands with the United States at the onset of the Indian removal. After the 1837 treaty with the Chippewa, Charles left his home in the Saginaw area. He met and fell in love with a young Potawatami woman, Wastawin. Wastawin was born in the Potawatami homelands of Illinois, where she lived with her family before removal. As a child, Wastawin was forced out of Illinois. She and her family relocated with many other Potawatami in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Charles and Wastawin began their family in Iowa, where they had two sons. David Rhodd was born in 1841, and Alexander Rhodd was born in 1843. The 1846 treaty with the Potawatami created a new reservation in Kansas, a 30-square-mile tract of land that promised a plentiful food supply from hunting and fishing and fertile lands for farming. Relocation began as many Potawatami families in Iowa bid farewell to Council Bluffs and embarked once again on a journey toward a new home along the Kansas River. St. Mary's Catholic Mission was established on the Kansas Reserve in 1847. The mission served as headquarters for the Potawatami and became the center of a large population of Potawatami families. The beauty and fertility of the new reserve and its location along the California and Oregon Trail, one of the great highways of the territory, made it very desirable to settlers, but it remained an Indian reservation, and no title to any land could be obtained except through marriage. And it was in that capacity that Charles H. Rhodd was listed among the first settlers on the reserve in the township of Silver Lake in 1847. Located just east of Rossville along the railroad at a point where a bend in the river formed a beautiful sheet of water, Silver Lake became home to many Potawatami families, including Charles and Wastawin, and it was there that their third child, Mary Rhodd, was born in 1848. After the birth of their fourth child, Charles Richard Rhodd, in 1854 in Kansas, Charles left for Michigan again, this time establishing himself in the area and resuming close ties with the Chippewa as an interpreter. Between the years 1854 and 1856, Charles completed a land survey for the Chippewa reserves of Saginaw, Swan Creek, and Bell River, listing his mother, Naukejekokwa, among the pages as a widow. Charles also began the first trading venue in present-day Midland, Michigan, but his wife, Wastawin, longed for home and returned to Kansas, where she gave birth to their fifth child, Elizabeth Rhodd, around 1858. By 1859, Charles was listed for the first time on the annuity rolls of the Chippewa of Swan Creek and Black River, himself, one wife, and 4 children. The same year, he was elected as the first sheriff of the newly established Isabella County. The children's names appeared for the first time on the 1863 Kansas tribal roll for Potawatami Indians. Their parents were not listed. David Rhodd, the oldest son of Charles and Wastawin, was 22 at the time of the 1863 Kansas rolls. He was married to Julia Rhodd, and they were expecting their first child. Alexander Rhodd was 20 years old and married to 18-year-old Mary View Rhodd. They were listed as a family with a 2-year-old boy, Joseph, and 8-year-old Charles Richard Rhodd, Alexander's younger brother. Mary Rhodd was 14 at the time. Her name appeared alongside that of 5-year-old sister Elizabeth. Charles H. Rhodd passed away on his reservation in Michigan on November 3, 1867, and in 1869 the Shawnee County Probate Court in Topeka, Kansas granted guardianship of the 2 youngest children to their loving older siblings who had already been caring for them. The children of Wastawin and Charles H. Rhodd lived through the Civil War and struggled to stay together over the years, looking only to each other for strength and support. The turbulence of their childhoods created an unbreakable bond that has spanned over a century and became the legacy of the Rhodd family of the citizen Potawatami Nation. David Rhodd and his wife Julia were both born in Iowa near Council Bluffs. They began their family there with two sons, Alexander, who was born in 1863, and Henry, was born in 1865. They relocated to the new reserve in Kansas, joining David's younger siblings shortly after the birth of their second son. The rest of their children, Edward, Josephine, Israel, and Charles, were all born in Kansas. The children of David and Julia Rhodd flourished, adding the names of McKinney, Hernandez, Simon, and Wattet to the family. Alexander Rhodd, the second son of Charles and Wastawin, became a stockman and a farmer. He and his wife, Mary View Rhodd, had 3 children, Ellen, Tom, and Mary Ann, before his young wife passed away in 1871. Alexander's second marriage was to Zoa Bruno Bourbonnais Rhodd, the beautiful sister of Jean-Baptiste Bruno. Both Alexander and Zoa became icons of love and strength, retaining their culture and heritage in the midst of a new world and new ways. Zoa was a known expert in herbal medicine and was sought out for help by both natives and non-natives for her wisdom. Alexander was one of the original individuals to receive a land allotment as a member of the citizen band Potawatami, and served on the business committee that signed the Potawatami Agreement with the United States Commissioners at Shawnee Town on June 25, 1890, which provided for allotments of land to each citizen Potawatami. The children of Alexander and Zoa Rhodd continued the legacy of their parents and grandparents and added the names of Little and LeClaire to the family. Peter Albert married Wendelina Emel, a Russian-German immigrant, and had 5 children. Inez Rhodd married Thomas Jefferson Little. Together they had 4 daughters. Lizzie Rhodd married John LeClaire, and they had 7 children. John B. Rhodd married Andeline Thorpe and had several children. Doc Rhodd married Lizzie Curley and had 5 children. Mary Rhodd, the oldest daughter of Charles and Wastawin, married the handsome young Jean-Baptiste Bruno. Like Mary, Jean-Baptiste Bruno was also of Indian and French descent. He had served as an ox team driver for the U.S. Army during the Civil War and was famous in the area for saving the lives of several young Potawatami men on a wagon train through northern Kansas in 1863 when they were stopped by a Pawnee war party thirsty for revenge against the Potawatami. Jean-Baptiste Bruno offered to fight 2 of their best warriors in exchange for the lives of the young Potawatami men on the wagon train. He told them that if they could kill him, they could have the others. However, if he was able to beat their 2 best warriors, they must allow them to pass, unmolested. Jean-Baptiste Bruno fought the 2 warriors and won. The Pawnees kept their word and allowed them to pass. When the story spread, 3 brother chiefs of the Potawatami at the time adopted Jean Bruno as their son and nephew. John and Mary were married the following year on June 20, 1864 in Kansas, and named 3 of their sons after the chiefs. Samuel William Bruno was called Tikwaco, John Anthony Bruno was called Shawanashe, and Moses Bruno was called Percheatwan. In addition to Lizzie Rhodd, Mary's younger sister, their other children were Julia, Joseph Oliver, Josephine, Bella Bina, and David Bruno. Mary Bruno, like her other siblings, was one of the original members of the Citizen Potawatami, receiving citizenship and a land allotment. She and her family relocated to the new Potawatami homelands located in Indian Territory, Oklahoma. The children of Mary Rhodd and Jean-Baptiste Bruno also established themselves in Oklahoma among their family and remained close. Charles Richard Rhodd, the youngest son of Charles and Wastawin, married Helen Acton Rhodd, the daughter of Angeline, also known as Ajnik, Belair, and James Acton, also known as Ashcombe. Their wedding took place on November 2, 1872 in Rossville, Kansas. Charles Rhodd kept books for the tribe for many years, and was well known as an expert in herbal medicines. He had a vast knowledge of roots, herbs, and treatments for various diseases. In fact, Indians from several surrounding tribes regularly called on him for help instead of a non-Indian doctor. Charles Richard Rhodd was one of the individuals that became a founding member of the citizen Potawatami Nation. He and his family moved to their new home in Indian Territory around 1904. Charles' wife of 52 years, Helen, passed away on October 19, 1924, and Charles Richard Rhodd passed away 4 years later in the fall of 1928. Most of the children of Charles Richard and Helen Rhodd went to Chilocco Indian School and Haskell Institute. Ida Florence Rhodd married Frank LeClaire and had 9 children. Noah J. Rhodd had just the initial J for his middle name because his parents, Charles and Helen, couldn't agree on whether to name him John or James. He married Etta Elsie Tate on November 1, 1900 in Potawatami County, Oklahoma. Noah was 24 years old and Etta was 17. Their families had been neighbors and friends for years. Noah and his family moved to Pawhuska, Oklahoma in 1924 and lived at the Indian camp. Noah, his brother Tom, and their cousins, the Curly Boys, helped to build Sacred Heart Church in Oklahoma. Noah and Etta lived for many years in the Sacred Heart area, and 5 of their children are buried there, as well as Noah's father, Charles Richard Rhodd. David C. married Rebecca Buffalo Chief and had 4 children who were also of Ponca blood. Eunice May Margaret was called Maggie. She married John Curley, the son of Peter Curley and Macy McCowell, and they had 4 children, adding the Curley name to the Rhodd family tree. Maggie died giving birth to their youngest child, and John Curley left the 4 little ones to be raised by their grandfather, Charles Richard Rhodd, and his wife, Helen. Thomas Rhodd married Mary Pamdosh Silvers. Together they had 8 children. Later, Thomas married a second time to Grace Rhodd and settled in California. The Rhodd family history, which began with the 5 young children of Charles Rhodd and Wastewin, has grown into a long and winding family tree with leaves like 1,000 blowing memories and tiny buds that bring forth each new generation that will be nurtured with love and strengthened with pride.